Welcome, everyone. Very happy to see so many participants today. I want to say a few words on who we are, who are behind this event. We are Innocode, and you might know us through our flagship product, which is the Citizen app, or through our various smart city initiatives that we're working in, mostly the Nordics, but starting to work a bit around Europe and the States as well. So we're based in the Nordics, but we have most of our employees in Ukraine. So naturally, this is a subject that comes close to heart for several reasons for us. Partly because it's a very big, it has a big effect on a lot of our employees, but also we work close with municipalities around the Nordics, and we see how this subject is getting rightly more and more attention, and it's something that is high up on the agendas of our clients. So we want to facilitate the discussion of this subject and hopefully bring some more insights to it. But to be transparent, we are not expert in crisis and risk communication. We know a lot about channel strategy and how to reach people, citizens, digitally. But we wanted to bring in more voices for this session. So I'm very, very happy to have Magde Nour with us from the academic world, or how to say. It's a PhD candidate from Fagskolan Kristiania. And I will let him introduce himself very soon. But we also have Henrik Olinder with us from MSB, or Myndigheten för samhällsskydd och beredskap, tror jag. And even worse in English, Swedish Contingencies Agency. We had a briefing right before this meeting, and I'm still having trouble saying that. But I think Henrik said that they might change the English name soon, so that's good for my sake and my tongue. And in the end, we will also have Bjarte, our CEO, talk about this subject from our perspective. You have probably met him before, at least on LinkedIn, where he's pretty active. Yeah, we will start off with Magdi, and he will share some insights from the COVID-19 pandemic and his research there. Henrik will bring more of the governmental perspective on things. And yes, Bjarte will do a more practical and down to earth, I would say, take on on crisis communication. So, Magde, I'm very happy to see you here today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the introduction, and good morning, everyone. And thank you for joining today at this important digital forum. My name is Magde Nour, and I'm a PhD candidate at Kristiania University College and University of Bergen, and I've been studying communication during crisis, specifically during COVID-19. Today, I want to share with you some critical insights about crisis communication, specifically how we can build trust and resilience through inclusive strategies. So let me start by sharing the foundation of our research. The quote you see, communication is second only to vaccine in combating pandemic. This is not just an opinion. This comes from our systematic analysis of crisis communication strategies across the highly infected countries during COVID-19. We studied countries that were hit hardest by the pandemic to understand what communication strategies actually worked and which one failed. So the results were striking for us. For example, like 78% of 78% of high trust citizens followed government directive, compared to only 64% of low trust citizens. But here's the most important finding: trust can be built when government used transparent communication, the trust increased by almost 67%. So the key finding at the bottom is crucial, that each unit increase in trust translate to a measurable increase in protective behavior adoption. That means investing in communication is investing in public health outcome. And we're gonna see how that will translate into numbers later on. But now let me show you like what trust building actually looks like in practice. So here we see the contrast between success and failure in crisis communication. On the left, we have the success stories of New Zealand and Norway, where in New Zealand they achieve 80% approval rating during their worst crisis period. How? Through empathy and the message of like we are the team of 5 million. That made every citizen feel part of the solution. The prime minister goes on Facebook Live from her home. That that broke down the formal barrier between governments and citizens. Norway also achieved, to a great extent, remarkable results, like almost 98% compliance rates. So that maintained 80% public confidence throughout the entire pandemic by just combining digital communication with traditional media, ensuring no one left behind. I remember during the early days of pandemic, it's been reported the Norwegian authorities sent around over 5 million text messages to people. On the right side, we see what happened when communication fails. For example, in the United States, we saw the United States became the largest driver of COVID-19 misinformation globally. Uh, there were split messaging from different states, and also there were split messaging across the two aisles of the political parties. So also in Brazil, we saw it was the second highest global fertility rate from COVID-19, and uh, that was mainly due to the interference of the political messages with scientific messages, and also like the distribution of misinformation by the leaders themselves in the country. So the result shown at the bottom tells that the whole story, like clear communication strategies, almost uh, lead to 30% greater compliance with health measures, which could be the difference between, I don't know, it could be a difference between life and death during a pandemic. But effective communication isn't just about the message, it's about reaching the right people. So to to target group adaptation, one of the biggest mistakes in the crisis communication is using generic messaging for everyone. Our research shows that this will fail the vulnerable population when they needed help the most. Let me give you a concrete example, like COVID-19 vaccination campaign that used culturally appropriate content increased vaccination rates by over 30% among historically non-adherent population. This shows the power of targeted communication. Also, if you look at the age groups here, young people age responded to social media and peer messaging, while adults respond better to email, Facebook, family-oriented approaches, while seniors they respond better to traditional media and authority based communication. But there is a critical gap we discover in rural areas. it shows like 31% lacking broadband access, which creating systematic information gap during emergencies. This means during a crisis, be it today or next year or in 10 years, our most vulnerable population become even more isolated from life-saving information. This is why like one size fit all communication doesn't work. We must adapt our approach to reach every citizen, and as I said, like left no one behind. So this brings us to an important question about the digital platform. Uh, Digital platform, as we know, like can be a powerful tool for crisis communication, but at the same time, like they can also be dangerous threat. But from our research point of view, is like the key understanding is to how to use them properly. When used correctly, digital platform could enable real-time communication and public engagement. For example, in Spain, they provide an excellent example during COVID. They used hashtag campaign to spread science-based updates and at the same time to monitor or measure the engagement. However, the same platform can be misused, as the example from Brazil, where misinformation is spread through social media, which undermine the public health outcome measures, and that contributed to unnecessary deaths that could be avoidable. The lesson here is clear, like digital platforms are tools, not a solution. So the success depends entirely on how we use them. So we need proactive strategies to harness the power while protecting against the risk. So through our research, we identified core principles that determine success or failure. So here's the most important finding, that communication effectiveness from our point of view depends on trust building, empathy, and not technical sophistication alone. This changed everything about how we approach crisis communication. It's not about having the most advanced technology or the most sophisticated system. It's about human connection and trust. On the left, you see what works: transparent, being transparent and acknowledge uncertainty, as people appreciate honesty even when you don't have all the answers. For example, like when the pandemic came, we didn't know what to do, but at least like if we share that with people, like we don't know what to do now, but like we can start with 1, 2, 3, 4. That will help building trust. Also, empathetic messaging that recognize the sacrifice people are making. Instead of saying like, okay, like religious places will be closed or will be closed, the message could be tailored in an empathetic way. That would make people to adhere more to the message. Also, like using a consistent trusted sources. That's it would be great like to have the same credible voices every time, not like, for example, like what happened in the US, where like the president saying something, the governor saying something else, CDC something totally different. And also, most important thing was a two-way communication engagement that listened to feedback. Like an example we gave from Spain, where they were measuring the engagement of population, and in some countries they talk with people to get their feedback about how authorities are communicating. On the right side, you could see what fails. Definitely politicizing messaging that put politics before public health. Inconsistent information sources that confuse people. We're gonna talk about that because that's part of the criticism for the Nordic model, the inconsistency. Also, the sources that confuse people, and definitely the algorithm that also had a role in confusing people, because algorithm dependent distribution that we cannot control. The same messages people are putting on social media. For example, in a study in India, they measured the messages on Twitter, and they found that like most of the engagement from people who was from outside India. So you can't make sure that the message is got to the intended receiver. One-way communication that talk at people instead of with them. Uh, Also, technical sophistication that prioritize showing off over clarity. And also, I remember during the first days of COVID, like we have been drawn with information and we had to cherry pick, like, what are you looking for here and there? But it wasn't tailored to our needs, kind of. Also, the choice is clear. Choose empathy and trust over technology and complexity, and that will work. Now, let's examine one of the biggest challenges in crisis communication, which is the, the bridging the accessibility gap. The digital divide challenge is real and dangerous. Um, Countries with higher digital exclusion experience higher COVID-19 cases and death rates. This is not a coincidence. This is a cause and effect. Look at the statistics. Rural areas show lower digital platform engagement. Less than 25% of crisis communication website globally do not doesn't meet the only 25% meet the basic accessibility standards. But successful strategies that combining digital and traditional approaches reach more than 80% of the population compared to only 60% when it comes to digital approach only. So an example I always love to give is like Norway and New Zealand. They show us the way forward by complementing digital campaign with traditional media. They ensured multilingual messaging, equitable access to critical updates. They understood that in crisis, leaving anyone behind is not acceptable. So every person in our communities deserve access to life-saving information, regardless of their age, language, disability, or technology access. So the Nordic model, Nordic countries, they share the same values, but they had diverse tactics when it came to COVID-19. Firstly, like Norwegian, like the Nordic model, it's built on high trust and solidarity instead of mandates. In other countries, we saw military-like intervention, like curfew and a lot of restrictions in a military-style way. Uh, Here, instead of mandates, they made a bill to civic responsibility using the word dugnad. I hope I'm pronouncing it right. And if I'm not wrong, it means working together for common good. Secondly, like they emphasize transparency and multilateral messaging. Denmark emphasized rational, always explaining the why behind the decision. Norway publicized expert debate, showing that scientific discussion is healthy and normal. Third, they use expert led and context sensitive governance. Sweden chose decentralized nudges, while Norway and Denmark used centralized lockdown. Different approach, but both based on expert advice adapted to their specific context. Uh, Further, they maintain equity and sustainability focus. All policies align with health promotion values, emphasizing inter, intersectorality and empowerment. They showed systematic flexibility. For example, Norway and Denmark applied hammer and dance strategies, while Sweden sustained tolerance-driven approach. The Nordic model had many strengths. However, it also faced challenges. There were some criticism, for instance, sometimes the reason behind decision were unclear, causing the distrust. People were complaining, like, based on what? Like, they were telling us, like, today only 20 people are allowed, and the next day it's 50, and the day after is 30. So there were no clear explanation for certain decision. But overall, the result was high compliance, social cohesion, resilient democratic governance. So the Nordic model shows that the strong crisis communication strengthens democracy rather than weakening it. So based on all this, based on our research and our concrete recommendations, what would be our concrete recommendation? Uh, we can identify three core pillars for effective crisis communication. First is uh, to build trust. This means transparent information sharing and to tell people what you know and what you don't know. Also to maintain the constant one voice messaging so people aren't confused by contradictory information. I don't want to hear the president say something and the same day hearing CDC saying something else. So also expert in integration, and we saw that in the US and in some Nordic countries, they put people who is in charge of public health in front. In UK, we saw the NHS was taking the lead. Um, Also, like the second pillar is to target effectively and to use demographic segmentation to reach different group appropriately. I remember during hurricane in the US, a lot of people died because the message wasn't tailored to based on demographics. Afterwards, they discovered that a lot of fatalities could be avoided because, for example, in the US, Latinos community, they trust their community leaders and message tailor in Spanish for them, while African American trust the message like from the church or their leaders or their trust-based organizations. So tailored message or target message using demographic segmentation to reach different groups that will develop culture competency to communicate across diverse culture and communities. Also, employ multimodal approach that combine digital and traditional media, so no one would be left behind, and address the digital divide. So, and the third pillar is to plan proactively. Uh, Establish framework before crisis hit has to be in place. Make pre-crisis investment in system a relationship, and most importantly, like to conduct regular training so the team is ready and implement continuous evaluation to keep improving. Those three pillars work well together. You cannot have an effective crisis communication with only one or two. You need the three of them. So looking toward the future, we see several emerging trends, especially like post-COVID evolution. The field of crisis communication is evolving rapidly, especially after COVID-19. So some of the trends I've been seeing, like first, people-centered approach are becoming the standard. So citizens now expect empathetic communication that address both information and emotional needs. The old model of just providing facts is no longer sufficient. So citizens are part of the co-creation now. Second, AI integration is showing remarkable results. We are seeing almost 70% improvement in accessibility through real-time translation and automated captions. The technology can help us reach more people more effectively than ever before, but still we have to make sure that there would be a human oversight, kind of. Third, there were some frameworks that emerged. For example, this readiness framework, that's even CDC is contributing it to their communication, crisis communication framework, which integrate multi-level efficiency and dynamic process to give us a more complete understanding of communication effectiveness. Fourth, continuous assessment, which is becoming a standard practice that enables systematic improvement rather than trial and error approach. The key shift happening in our field of crisis communication, and we are moving from reactive events management to strategic organizational capability, which is requiring systematic intervention and evidence-based improvement. Let me conclude with this takeaway from our research. I want to emphasize that during crisis, there is a need for a proactive measure to combat digital misinformation. Our research showed that implementing evidence-based approach will protect communities more effectively while building sustainable stakeholder trust. The three pillars we discussed before, it worked together. Trust enable predictable compliance improvement, targeting reach vulnerable population systematically, and planning reduce cost and time while improving outcome. But remember, this is not just about crisis response. Implementing these research based approaches will protect communities more effectively while building sustainable stakeholder that last beyond any single crisis. When we invest in a crisis communication, we are not just preparing for emergency, but we are building stronger and resilient communities for future. Thank you, and I want to leave you with these thoughts. Communication, when done right, it's not just a response to crisis, it's a foundation of a sustainable and inclusive communities. The evidence is clear. Investment in communities save life and strengthen democracy. The question is not whether we can afford to invest in crisis communication, but whether we can afford not to. I would be happy to answer any question, and I encourage you to reach out if you would like to discuss any of these findings. Thank you again, and I look forward for discussion.
Yeah, it's very interesting to hear your findings, and I really like what you say about how communication builds communities and how important that is, because that is something that we as well think about a lot, and just and this part before anything happens, and that you know your neighbor and that you know your community. And I think that is something that is quite lost, at least in the big cities today. So very interesting to hear, and we will get back to discussions later on. We have a session in the end for more open conversation between all of us. And if you have any questions for Magde, please add them to the chat, and we will bring them up in the end. But now we will let Henrik take over and start sharing his perspective of this.
Right, thank you very much. Can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Okay, you will have my slides in Swedish, and thank you very much for inviting me to this seminar. Very happy to join. My name is Henrik Olinder. I'm working for the Swedish Civil Contingency Agency, and I've been working there for a very long time, and also the agencies we had before that. And and I would like to say something about the experiences and the changes in crisis communication during the years, and a little bit about the challenges we have from now on. But crisis communication, I mean, that's the language of crisis management. It's how to see how the community can communicate during a crisis. We had put a lot of trust into this and by the citizens, and it's about communicating very, very quickly, as fast as possible to the citizens. That's the main and the most important things to do, and also it must be correct to all involved and a broader public and to the media. It's also, we have to think about crisis communication before, during, and after. And before, we have to plan, we have to train, we have to do education and everything. We have to learn to know all the people inside our organization, and also if we work in a municipality, we have to know the people who work with the same responsibilities in the same region or the municipality next to you, or even in different kinds of agencies. That's that's our job. We have to prepare everything for this, and to be prepared and know exactly what to do during a crisis situation. So a lot of the work we have to do is to be trained before something happens, but we don't know what will happen during a crisis, and it's also after. So crisis communication goes from all these three phases, and it never ends. The crisis never ends until all questions are answered. So this is, and it could go under a very, very long period. And like the tsunami we had in Southeast Asia, or the Estonia ferry who went down in the 90s, or the Oslo-Utøya, it will never ever end in this generation. It takes generations to end a crisis situation or the communication around it. I will give you some examples. This is from Norway, in Karasjok, in Norway in 1999, the 22nd of October. A school bus went into the river and 3 children were killed during this accident, and 4 others were wounded. But for several hours, people didn't know if there were other children or people in the water during the rescue work. So we can just imagine how people reacted, how they were talking, all the speculations and rumors around this. But this was a little bit before the digital era. But anyway, all kinds of municipalities or regions, or whatever we call the agencies, they must be planned, trained for all kinds of things, like a school bus accident. It's not just writing a plan in crisis communication. It must be going through all kinds of details, what can change. When for many years during this time, I was training people in crisis communication. We used this example in Norway, and we had many of these examples in Sweden, similar ones, to change the attitude, how to work with these kinds of accidents. So this is an example from Norway, and this shows one very important thing, how to train. And this doesn't just only mean emergency management. This is communication before, during, and after, especially in maybe in a municipality like Karasjok in Norway, where it happened. Okay, we can take the next slide, please. We had a big fire in the harbor of Halmstad, and in this center where they were working together, there were a lot of people with medical background, doctors and so on, and they wanted to communicate to the people. The fire was quite far away from the city, but anyway, they thought it was quite dangerous. So they started to communicate these kinds of message to people, that it was heavy smoke with nitrous gases and chlor gas and so on, and it could be very dangerous, but it was very low levels. So they had, and they were talking about other types of rainwaters and so on, which made it very, very confusing. This is very interesting if you read it and analyze it. When communication officers sit together with medical doctors and are making messages, it's of course correct, but no one really understands it. So this is quite interesting. How do we cope together with the health agencies and so on, and the crisis management agencies, like they did during the COVID-19? I mean, there were so much misunderstanding, and it came from the health agencies, I believe, a lot. We can take the next slide. Crisis communication, it's top-down and horizontal. It's both. It will never change. And that's how we communicate all the time. If I take an example from the top-down communication, is from when Prime Minister Stoltenberg, after the Oslo Utøya, he entered the public stage after the bombing and the shooting at Utøya. Everyone in Norway, in Sweden and other countries were of course waiting for the Prime Minister to speak. There were several others who did it as well. But this is the essence of crisis communication, that the leader is entering the public stage and speak to the public. The Greeks were also writing about this. So this is nothing new. People want to hear the leader. And it will be if the leader don't speak, it will be a vacuum of information. But anyway, we don't just sit and wait hours for someone to say something. We communicate all the time to each other. So it's always a two-way communication, even from the leaders and so on. It's always the communication. That's probably not any problem at all, that people communicate to each other, but the message must be on spot very, very quickly. So the prime ministers or the head of the municipality or the head of communication must be prepared 24/7 to communicate all the time. The media environment has changed a lot during these years, from the analog system, how we were listening to TV and radio at certain times. Now we can choose to listen to it whenever we want. And as an example, we also, in crisis communication, it's changed. When I started, we trained people to send mass fax to others. We did mass emails, and we also did send press messages through fax. And then we started to make websites and so on also, and some said we will never use any websites at all, never ever, just some year later on, everyone started to do it. And then, of course, to use social media. So, and I have been working with Ukrainians a lot about this crisis communication, and they say, we don't listen to radio, we don't trust radio. So people were listening to TV, and when they started with the strategic communication from the government, they were just seeing Zelensky all the time, and they liked him, of course, but it was the same message from the government all the time. So they started to listen to communicate on Telegram. That's their Facebook, Russian-made Facebook. And of course, everything was not correct, but these people know how to orient about this, to do their orientation about this. And in Sweden, I believe it's same in Norway, but in Sweden, politicians and agencies believe that people will sit and listen to Radio P4 and all the warning messages. And if we will have a war, it will be so many warnings all the time. So there will be no radio program. It will just go on. So people, of course, have already turned into the social media, and so do the agencies. They must work where the people are consuming. But a very important thing is, even among young people, if something happens, they still go to the TV and listen and to the established media and read and listen and watch the news from the as a source, because these organizations know very well how to handle these types of messages and communicate to the audience, and they do it better than the agencies do. So we have to be careful with the media and know that they are sort of translating our language to people, and people are smarter than agencies think or politicians think. So they need advanced information and or some need less advanced information. You can take the next slide, please. All right, building trust. This is how we want everything to be. When some children from the kindergarten get lost in the forest, the police come and take them back. And the police are very, very skilled in how to communicate on social media, especially in Sweden. That's how we want things to be, the order to be established. I can just say some words about that. That is interesting is how rumors are spreading very easily. It's not conducted by anyone. We have it, this kind of phenomenon. It's something we start to talk everywhere in all kinds of situations. If some children disappear, people start rumors about things. It's not disinformation. That's something else. It's a phenomenon. And probably you heard about Bengt of Klintberg, the rat in the pizza, or the stolen kidney. This is the same kind of phenomenon. It pops up in different ways. And I and some others, we wrote a booklet about there's no crisis without rumors. You can download it from our website. And it's how to keep an approach against rumors. And remember, you cannot combat them. They will disappear. And then you think you have combat them. Okay, we can take the next slide. I just want to say thank you, and I would like to be part of this questions later on in the debate. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Henrik. Very interesting. And I think one of my questions has been like, how can we combat rumors? And you answered that in your presentation. So I guess we just get back to that a bit later in how we approach them, maybe. All right, Bjarte, I'm gonna stop my sharing and hopefully your presentation works.
Great. Thank you, Henrik. Thank you, Magde, for interesting insights so far. I feel and I hope that my perspective on this are going to latch into yours in a way. Of course, for those of you who know us at Innocode, well, we are working with these questions, not so much on a sort of government or theoretical level, but more on what I would call a channel strategic level. And more of a practical level. As of today, we work with approximately 40 municipalities in the Nordics. And we have, during these years of channel and communication work with municipalities, built some experience, I hope, that we might share with you today. I think if we go back and look at digital communication from local governments, looking at the Nordics in particular, the Nordics have always been quite sort of early adopters of digital tools and such, due to the sort of the economic situation and due to how the countries are. So it's been many years since the municipality in Norway felt that they had to have a website, of course. And most municipalities and local governments have been working with our websites for a long time, and then adding channels according to what could we call it? According to trends or so, we have been adding channels. We're going to discuss some of this channel strategic perspective today. And first of all, I want to define channel strategies as we see it. First of all, we try to distinguish between what we call inbound and outbound channels. An inbound channel is typically in marketing and communication. Is typically something that demands the initiative of the recipient. Yeah, so a website would be an inbound channel. It demands a clear initiative from the receiver side to go look for information. The opposite would be outbound channels. So channels that reach out to the citizen or to the recipient with a message. It could be advertisement in social media, it could be digital advertisement, it could be outdoor announcement, it could be posters on the bus stop, it could be a lot of channels that we have to work from. I think that sometimes public sector has a tendency to not take the outbound channels seriously enough, I think, to be quite honest. Looking at private sector, looking at what you would call marketing, the main responsibility for a message to reach its audience will always be with the sender, naturally, because they have the main interest in that. Sometimes with some governmental issues, I feel that too much of the responsibility is put on the receiving side. And I think both Henrik and Magde are sort of moving in this direction with their discussions. So it would be interesting to put it in their context when I've done my slides here today. So let's look at some of the cases that I've been discussing with municipalities the last 4 or 5 years working with this. First of all, we did a webinar with the former communication director of Botkyrka kommun. This was a few years back. Edvard Unskog is his name, and he told me about what happened here in 2021 when they had some major fires in what would you say in English, the trash stations around the municipality. Of course, giving off toxic sort of smoke and gases to the local community, which is a major problem. And this is 2021, so it's not really the Stone Age, is it? It's only 4 or 5 years back. And Edvard, what he was telling me was that when this happened, and they had a very time-sensitive information that had to reach the citizens, they had no channel at all. They had the opportunity of maybe sending SMSs, but it was quite costly because you need to pay per SMS, and it's also a bit of a difficult situation to decide when you can actually send SMS without sort of breaching privacy and GDPR issues and so on. So interestingly, in a situation like this, what Botkyrka had to do at the time was to sit down, discuss this, and they ended up sending postal letters because that was within their sort of data security and their GDPR policy to actually send data. So of course, the local media took care of sort of, as you say, Henrik, the P4 radio was probably the main channel. The local media was an important channel. But as for the municipality's own voice in this and their own channel, it was, of course, very delayed. It took more than a couple of days to get information to the citizens next door to the city hall, because we had no sort of outbound channel. Stuff were on the website, but again, how do you get people to go there and look for this information on a daily or hourly basis, really? Because this changes, close the windows, open the windows, whatever. Don't leave your house, whatever, like that. Another example of outbound communication, and I would say almost surprisingly, not too many local governments in Nordics are doing this. Email is an outbound channel. Again, it's much due to not wanting to have citizens register their addresses and GDPR and storing data and so on. For those of you who know me a bit more, you probably know that I'm from Bergen on the west coast of Norway. And I'm pretty proud of that, which most people from Bergen is. It's a pretty patriotic and sort of close community, even if I haven't lived in Bergen for 20 years. So this is not something that I do because I think it's fun. But I get these newsletters still from Bergen Kommune. I've been getting these for almost 10 years, twice a week. They send these newsletters. And I think it could be an efficient channel. It could be a way to establish a relationship that is more frequent than my visits to a website. I mean, our data shows that a regular citizen visits the municipality website on average twice a year. Twice a year. That's our digital relationship with our municipality. With this, Bergen is sending me newsletters twice a week, which is good. They give me some information. The problem with this is not maybe the channel. I think it's quite an efficient channel. It's probably the format. I have been working with outbound channels for 15 years, and this format, saying the same subject line, the same intro every time, does not really spark an interest. I think Bergen should probably work more with a direct messaging to actually create some interest in the content and not just saying latest news every time. So that's coming from an email marketing perspective. They should probably think more in the line of the local newspaper. And I do think we can look to newspapers, to publishers in this context. Can you personalize? Can you go straight to message? Can you get engagement within, I mean, in an inbox like this or in any outbound channel, you have about 5 seconds. That's the time you have before I decide, delete, move on, or actually engage in the content. So I think email, why not? I think it's almost money is an issue in local governments, of course. Email is almost a free channel. It's worth trying out, I think, if you want to add to your sort of inbound web-based content. but there are risks to think about. I think emails are, Magde and Henrik, you both talked about trust as an important factor here. I mean, emails, unfortunately, it's a channel that is very easy to fake. It's quite easy for me to create a MailChimp account, to set up a sender name called Bergen Kommune, to send an email and say whatever. So the risk with emails, I don't know if you've seen, but the digital inbox of Swedish authorities, you could say, the official digital inbox, Kivra, they've stopped adding links to their emails because the risk of fakes of phishing is actually too big. So they send emails saying, okay, go to Kivra to check this out. But we're not adding a link here because then it's too easy to fake. So it's interesting. The same goes for most banks, most insurance companies. They're not adding links in their emails anymore because it's too easy to fake. So worth considering, I guess. This is me creating 3 emails from different municipalities that I know of: Danderyds kommun, Oslo kommune, and Stockholm stad. So this is how it looks in my inbox. This is done in 5 minutes. So we should consider this. I think for the messaging, you could read it yourself and see if this is something you want to share. For those knowing Danderyd, it's not very popular opinion to tear down the Villa Staden. I can tell you that much. All right, another outbound channel, Lova. This is from your home municipality. And I want to expand the notion of crisis a little bit here, because Magde and Henrik are talking very much sort of war, natural disaster, the big global crisis. But in a local community, a crisis can be much smaller than this and still affect big problems. Classic municipal content would be closing off the water for half a day, or electricity outage, or stuff like that. And in Järpen, in Åre kommune in Sweden, this is their main outbound channel, and it's not so uncommon. Putting up posters on the local ICA, the local food store, this is their go-to outbound channel. So yeah, I mean, it works, but it's of course not very reliable. It's hardly very data-driven. It's hard to measure, I guess. So it's just it's just a case of how sometimes we struggle to find the right channel, I think. Social, of course, Meta, Facebook has been and still is, I would say, for local governments, the main outbound channel to the citizens. In this context, in real crisis, it is, of course, very unreliable, I would say. The time perspective is very shaky. We all know the algorithms. So if I post something today on the municipal Facebook page, it could be shown to me as a citizen, I don't know, tomorrow, or maybe Friday, or even Sunday if I'm lucky or unlucky. So the time issue in social media is very hard. And Meta and Twitter, X, all these channels, they have been known to change their algorithms quite frequently, and honestly, not to prioritize the content of companies or organizations or public sector. So the actual reach in these channels are quite unstable, I would say. Also, a problem with Meta and social as an outbound would be that the control of the content is quite mediocre, I would say. There has been warnings about the Skövde Kommun in Sweden about other people faking content from Skövde, of course, and the same with ads pretending to be from SVT, Swedish television, or pretending to be from Expressen, and sometimes this can be hard to understand as a recipient who is the actual sender of this. And this, of course, is the difference between owning your channels and borrowing a channel from Facebook or from Meta. So they're going to be in charge of the channel, and you are not going to be in charge of the channel. That could affect the trust. It does affect the trust, I think. So there is an issue, and there is a discussion going on. You've probably seen it I know I'm going to speed up, Luba. There is a discussion on this. Should we, as public sector, should we be part of this? Should we trust our outbound communication in the hands of American social media giants? And the Norwegian Datatilsynet has been very clear on their stance in this. They have left the platform, and we do see more and more sort of sophisticated discussions on this, and a higher sort of insight into this, I would say. Just a tip on a podcast that I listened to. It's a Danish podcast, actually, discussing just this. Is it time to leave social media? I know this is a burning topic in the communication departments around the Nordics. So if you want some insight, I thought this was pretty interesting. Okay, we have more channels. We have more outbound. We're going towards the phone, of course. And there is an opportunity to make these sort of central push through to all phones messages. This is, of course, not the simplest, but it can be done on a national level. I know they're trying this in Norway, at least, where they can reach all phones at one time. There is an initiative centrally from Swedish digitizing authorities, and would that be the word, DIG, on creating one outbound channel from a national level, what they call a medborgarapp. A digital meeting from public sector. So we are seeing that public sector is moving in these questions. I'm going to speed through some cases from our experience, just to sort of look at different ways of communicating and different levels of crisis. We have the classic sort of road issues in Upplandsbro. We're closing this part to re-asphalt it. We have Svenljunga that have no internet in the central part of the municipality, so their website is down. Needs to be communicated, because the actual fiber to their servers is off. And we have the sort of the Longyearbyen and the Svalbard evacuation of an area due to avalanches and so on. So just trying to look at a broader perspective. One of our main cases in this perspective, of course, being Sandefjord in Norway, that established their citizen app just a few months before the COVID outbreak. They made a quick strategic decision when the outbreak came. They sent an SMS to all citizens saying, okay, from now on, all communication is through the app. And from there, they communicated outbound every hour, really, on the changing, as you say, Henrik, this changes every hour. Now you do this, now you do that, now you, so it's not up to the recipient, the citizen, to choose when to take part of this. What we see with Sandefjord, for example, is that they moved from 2 digital interactions on their website per year with those who have the app downloaded. They have an average of 2 digital interactions per week. And this, of course, in a trust perspective and stuff, is quite important, because you do establish this sort of closer relationship, I would say. As with all relationships, you need to talk, I would say. So some more critical information, crisis, call it what you want, but there's time stamp on this communication. It needs to be out now. There are fires, there are VMAs, there are important information from Hylte, and so on. We can go on forever. And I think most municipalities need to consider how are we doing our outbound communication? Is it email? Is it SMS? Is it app? Is it whatever? Some of these. Because I do see that users and citizens have other expectations, as you say, Henrik, other expectations on communication now than we did 10, 20, 30 years ago. We do expect it through to actually reach us, and not the other way around. So a lot of talk about digital channels, but they all depend on a couple of things, especially this thing called internet that is probably going to stick around for a while. But what if the internet goes down, Lova? What do we have to do then? There's no use with email or app or anything at that time.
Yeah, I guess the notes on ICA will be very efficient then. Yeah, that is a question, and I don't know if I have like this memory of when I lived in Stockholm back in 2017, 18, I think, and Hesa Fredrik went off. It was some person accidentally triggering the alarm, but it was an alarm that told everyone that there's a crisis going on. And then I think it was MSB's website that actually went down, and there were no information to gather anywhere really. And I think Sweden used to be quite unprepared for offline events before. Henrik, do you see that we are better prepared now? I mean, we have the brochures and everything, and maybe it's a better understanding that crisis can happen even in Sweden now?
Yes, I think we are better prepared since 2014, since Russia started a war against Ukraine. That's something always must happen. So I think that's why people are more interested and more prepared, and especially after the bigger invasion in 2022 from Russia. So we have this in our mindset that Russia is our enemy. That's a big difference between Norway and Denmark, for example. Finns have the same mindset as we have. So there is a little big difference between. I've been talking a lot with Norwegians, Danes, and Finns and Baltic people. But if we are better prepared for if everything goes down, I would say no. But I think if we will have a very major accident or a war, things will change. The banks will make it possible to make payments through digital ways, like they did in Ukraine. They have a lot of creativity, and other things will of course work in the digital area. We will not sit and wait, but these things will pop up. So and of course we try to have different kinds of techniques and so on, but we cannot have 3 kinds of radio systems. We don't afford that. So I believe it will be a blackout. Something must happen all the time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So it's but you still trust that the society will adapt and find ways, I guess, even if there would be a blackout or internet goes down.
It has always been possible to do that. So, but anyway, we cannot just rely on that issue.
No, exactly.
we must, we are, of course, we are thinking. We have a lot of knowledge.
Yeah, and it feels like we are planning more than maybe we did earlier when we didn't have this on top of mind as much. You all talk about trust, and I think this question will go out to all of you, really. How do we build that trust before anything happens? This webinar or whatever is aimed to communication. So how can we build trust through communications? Do you have any like guidelines or something that you say that a municipality should do before something happens?
Well, as I touched upon, I think it's the first and foremost to build trust. I think in a general perspective, it is important to actually build this relationship. I think as Magde was talking about too, if you start building relationship in the middle of a crisis, big or small, it's going to be hard. So I definitely believe we need to be more sort of proactive from public sector to actually teach people both where, when, and how to expect this communication to come. And I mean, teaching is on different perspectives, isn't it? It's either by saying, do this, do that. It could work, probably not. Or you teach people to do, but by actually adding some value on a daily basis. You add something in the communication that I want on a daily basis. I need this. I want this. I want to know when my trash is being picked up. I want to know when there's something going on in my local neighborhood. And who's going to give this to me? Is it a private channel? Is it the or is where do I get, if I can provide this value and provide this relationship on an early stage? I think we've moved pretty far by that. Magde, I don't know your input as both a researcher and as a citizen of Oslo, I presume. How you see this?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Trust has to be built over time. It can be built during crisis, even though like during crisis you can increase the level of trust, but it has to be uh, start building upon it before that. And that's why like I share the Nordic model, because they have a higher level of trust in government kind of compared to others, for example. So that make it easier for the authorities to communicate. For me, from my research perspective, I think also trust has something to do with the content or the message itself. If we are communicating in a transparent, constant way, I guess that way we can build trust with our communities, and also the community engagement, that's also help building trust. So at the time of crisis, we will know how we will tailor the message according to the requirements or the needs of our communities, because we will have a better ideas about them. A good example I always give is like during COVID, when they tell people, okay, you can go to mosque. Some people they took that in a bad way, like we want to go to mosque to pray together because that's much better, and due to religious reasons we have to be together. So they start having mosque within their houses. So the message, because the content wasn't targeting those people, so it was misunderstood, and it created kind of a mistrust between the authorities and people. Yeah.
That is very interesting. I actually had a question about how a municipality or local government can build trust in maybe low trust communities or more polarized communities. Could influencers be a solution, like knowing who influences the different groups? I mean, it's probably hard to identify, but do you have any examples of that?
Yeah, there were I don't remember the organization clearly, but it was in Australia. And when that shooting happened in a mosque, they reached to them, and they figure out a way how to communicate to the angry people or upset people about what happened through that organization. So in advance, before, if you plan for that well, and like who people trust, that could help. And just very quick example, like from the Hurricane Katrina in the US. As I said before, it was really inevitable because they figure out later on, Latinos, for example, like they have some cultural group that they trust in their own language. You can't speak to them in English and expect them to comply with that, and so on. Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably a very hard thing to do, but if you know your communities, I guess that is a very effective way of getting out information. to reach out to these influencing people. So I just feel like if I worked at a municipality as a communicator, I would be a bit overwhelmed because it feels like we have to be everywhere all at once. And so I just want to give all of you a question. If you had to prioritize what channels a municipality should use, where should it be? Should it be in all social channels? Should they have an app? Should they have a website? Of course, they have a website, but you get my point maybe. Where should we be speaking? Everywhere, or should we choose a channel or three?
I can say something about that. It's very difficult to choose different kinds of channels and so on. And the most important thing is that we do our job, and in a good way, then people will trust us, and then they will listen to us. And especially if we are well prepared for a crisis situation, whatever it is, we have a lot of it's much easier to handle the situation. If we are not prepared, or just have some small plans, or very tiny trained, we will lose trust and they will not listen to us. But someone who do a good job, that's someone they listen to. They will probably, and I don't think it's if people don't listen to the municipality in Bergen, so they send their emails, but it doesn't really mean that people are off. I mean, they get this through conversations and so on. They know what's going on in the conversation. So, but they don't go to the websites because it's quite boring. But they go to the school site and so on, the parents and so on, and so it's. I think it's problematic if the municipality got thousands of questions every day. Then you have a crisis. If you don't have it, oh, that's good. Something is working in Bergen. I'm very happy for that. That's why they are so patriotic.
True that. Bjarte hasn't lived there for a very long time.
Yeah, they got it. They got it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Henrik, we've got the football team. That's enough to keep me engaged. So that's fine.
Yeah.
Bjarte, do you have anything you want to add to that question? If you, we're very biased in this, of course, and everyone knows our main product. So, but
well, I don't know if everyone knows our main product in the world, but we hope so. But I think there's a question in the chat too. I mean, about this sort of consistency, and this is something that we see in the consistency of communication. How do we build a digital relationship with our citizens? It's hard because in the Nordics, what's special with us is that we have these local governments that are very small entities. So we have, in Norway, we have these municipalities with 900 citizens, and the organization in itself is quite small. The resources are very small, and this is a problem. I mean, we can't expect the communication officers around the municipalities to create this sort of weekly or daily engaging content with our citizens. It's impossible on a resource level. Yeah, they're not trying to be newspapers. They're not trying to be entertainment factors at all. But what we can, and for those who do know the product, we are very much fan of the idea of letting the community itself being the engine of content, because we do see that there's a problem with local visibility on digital content in the Nordics and in the world. Really, we don't know what's going on close to us because we are consuming these sort of global social media, and what happens in New York is more present to me than what happens in my local community, and that's a problem. And I think that's an idea for, of course, those of you who knows, that's our sort of idea. If we can work as a facilitator of local content, we can build this sort of weekly relationship. And in the event of something bad happening, crisis, water outage, whatever, we do have this sort of local position, and that's a channel to me. So I think that's worth thinking about. It doesn't have to be through the Innocode Citizen app. That would be stupid. It could be through email. It could be any way. But I think just taking the community's help in creating interest in content, that's to me the key of creating some sort of local presence, at least.
Yeah. Magde, do you have anything you want to add when it comes to channels and how a municipality or local government should prioritize between channels?
Yeah, as I noted in my presentation, it's what I'm concerned about. It's not the sophisticated technology, you know, with whatever we can get our hands on that would work. For example, like the question he posted at the end, you know, in a case of a crisis and there is no internet or the internet is down, what would be? I guess like, yeah, that board at the grocery store would work perfectly. And I guess also at the crisis evolve, it will determine which reliable source people go to, so we can follow them there. When COVID happened, like we started with text messages, and then everyone here, for example, in Norway, were going like to healthnorga.no, and then like there were some application people changed to. So I guess like, yeah, wherever we could get access to get to people, that would be the perfect channel. But more importantly, I will still stress the message itself. Yeah, then the channel.
Yeah, thank you. It's very good. Henrik, we have just a few more minutes, and I just want to address a bit what you talked about rumors. Like, we can't stop them. How should we, how should municipality handle them? What should be their attitude towards them? Should they, how should they combat them? Should they be in the channels where they spread? Should they be taking the dialogue on social media or existence or wherever it happens? Or should they just, how should we handle it?
Usually we are talking about them and spread them before we realize that it's rumors. So in the beginning, we are part of them, and then maybe we realize, oh, this is a rumor. It doesn't really mean that rumors are false or true. It's a neutral phenomenon. But if there is something that is going on, we should not repeat them. If we repeat them, we start to spread the rumors. I will give you an examples about this LVU thing in Sweden. We have it in Norway and Denmark and other countries as well, that the government or the agencies are kidnapping Muslim children and send them to Christians or homosexual couples, you know, things like that. And the Prime Minister and the health agencies and other agencies are saying, don't spread these kinds of rumors. We are not kidnapping anyone. And then people say, what? Are we kidnapping people? So, I mean, they are going into the trap. They are just sending them to others. So, I'm very surprised that we have our 3 last prime ministers, this one and 2 others, were saying these kinds of messages to people, and also the agencies, and also the social welfare people in municipalities. All of them are repeating this kind of things. I mean, it's so they are into the trap. We should not repeat it. And it's and of course some, but anyway, it's we start to speculate, and we have to keep this in mind when people don't know anything. If you're living in a place and you maybe your company will shut down. People speculate, oh, who is going to buy? I will lose my job, but you will keep yours, and so on. And it's no one behind it. We have it in our minds, and we start to speculate. And this is very good, because then we show that we want, people are communicating. People are not sitting and waiting. If we don't have any information, we start to speculate. All people are genius in some ways.
That's a good end point, I think.
Yeah, thank you.
Genius. Okay. Yeah, we are running out of time, and I just want to say thank you so much for joining today, especially Henrik and Magde. We really appreciate your contribution. And for everyone who has listened this long, I'm very happy to have had you here. We will send out the screen recording and maybe some presentations afterwards. And if you have any questions, we will send out our contact details as well. And I think we will finish up with that if no one has anything to add. And I wish you a very pleasant Wednesday going forward with this day. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Have a nice summer. Bye-bye.
Yeah,
Bye.
you too. Bye.